Okay, here's an update on that 1972 CB350 that I got 4th of July weekend and started to fix up with the intention to flip it. If you saw my last video, you'll know that it sat in a damp garage for 20 years, which resulted in a fair amount of rust. The engine appeared to be seized, at least initially, had a stuck valve. The chrome was pitted, particularly on the front and rear fender, and on the carb covers there was an old battery in it. But generally speaking, cosmetically it was in pretty rough shape. Also the coils were shot, so those had to be replaced. So I went about addressing all of that by stripping the bike down from the engine back, took the rear wheel off, the rear fender, took off the swing arm, battery box, toolbox, all that fun stuff. And then my next step was to actually go at all of that with a wireless angle grinder with a nylon stripping disc on it. The engine also was pretty rough. It had a very sort of chalky oxidation all over it, and I wasn't quite sure what to do with that. But eventually I was able to strip down most of it, got the pipes off, tried to keep everything organized in a bin, and this is that wireless angle grinder I used. And I actually went through an entire strip and sand disc. And then once those were all stripped down, I cleaned them up and gave them a fresh coat of paint and a coat of clear coat. And the sanding disc did a pretty good job. Here's a picture of the pipes, one that was cleaned up and the other one before it was cleaned up. The points needed to be addressed. The points plate was actually cracked, so I had to replace that. But here's a walkthrough once I put everything back together again. I don't consider this to be a proper restoration. It was a very, very light resto just to make it semi-presentable. Just got rid of some of the pitting on the chrome. I was able to use a coarse brush to brush off most of the oxidation and then wiped it down with Marvel Mystery Oil. Had to put in a new petcock with new fuel lines, rebuilt the air filters, rebuilt the carbs, swing arm, and all the other pieces that I painted looked decent. Still some rust on the shocks. Let's see what else. The lights all work, and had some paint on the chain guard. I thought the engine came out decent. I didn't drop it. I was thinking about it, but I was able to address the frame by masking it off and then giving it a little shot of the spray paint. And yeah, and that's how it looked. So with everything running pretty decently well and the clutch dialed in, I went ahead and took some shots so I could post it up. And here's how it was looking. Always looks a little bit nicer in the photos, especially when you apply some filters on there, tweak the depth of field. But I thought it looked pretty good. I really like these CB350s. They just have a really sort of handsome set of proportions. The paint on this was pretty nice despite the pitting. Just a great color. And here's my final startup. I sold it to a local guy who was into vintage bikes exactly 2 weeks to the day after getting it.